Okay guys, check this out. This is our application that is running on Azure App Services, and it looks a little bit different from the last time that we worked on it because we are missing the edit data area on the right hand side of our screen, and we've moved it to this pop-up, which is a modal pop-up that we are able to now use now that we've upgraded our web forms from 4.7.2 to 4.8. You'll notice we can click around in our application just like we did before, except now we can dismiss that data from the screen, or we can choose to update it and click an update button to save the data instead. I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we go back to our WebForms playlist, and we are going to take a look at the Modal feature, which is a new feature that we are able to use after our upgrade to .NET 4.8. Now, I started our project with a bit older of a .NET framework, which was 4.7.2, and we recently updated to 4.8, and 4.8 actually has a brand new Bootstrap, which is very, very recent and has all of the newest sort of web form controls and things and that you can use in your application. And one of those is the modal feature. And the modal feature allows us to take some of our controls and put them into a pop-up form basically on your screen that can be dismissed and also can be used to have other buttons for other features in your application. I'm very excited to start using these controls. There are so many new ones, which is really awesome, and it's really gonna step up our game. Let's get to it. Now, many of you may have started this project with .NET 4.8, and you don't need to worry about doing the upgrade. If you do need the upgrade, make sure to check out my Patreon. I'd love to see you there. Okay guys, this is our application. We are gonna blast through this one today. Just like usual, these are our objects on the right hand side in our Solution Explorer, except now we're using this ToOperations 48 application, which is the updated application. So just like we have in our other application, we've got our default.aspx. It is a single page application at this point for our tow truck operations. And if I open it in Azure or on the web, you can see that it has the tow-operations.azurewebsites.net. And just like usual, you can see it looks a little different from what we've been working with when we had the old Bootstrap, but that edit data section is kind of unwieldy and it's a bit clunky. It doesn't really fit what we want to do, and so we want to take that edit data section on the right hand side. We want to put a button in our button section and have all of that edit data stuff come up in a pop-up. Now we're going to go to Bootstrap, so you'll have to go to getbootstrap.com, and we are going to choose 5.2.3, which is the version that is supported with the newest web forms. And let me tell you, it comes with a lot of stuff. Now you're going to want to go into your content folder and click on that Bootstrap file that you see there, and that's going to tell you the version that you have. Now this is version 5.2.3 because we did our update. Now most of you might be on this already, but if you have 3.4.1, you do need to do an upgrade, which is essentially creating a .NET 4.8 solution and copying in your code. Okay, going back to our Bootstrap, there is our 5.2.x. That is a very, very new Bootstrap, and it is going to be awesome for us because it's so much better than the 3.4.1 that we were on for such a long time with web forms. And it has this nice modal control. If you click on the controls on the left hand side, it'll bring up the modal code for your application. And so there are some great examples. We're going to take some example code and we're going to use it. We're going to use the most basic example, which is the one there. And you can see if I click this live demo model, it gives you an idea of what the modal is going to look like. Super awesome. And we are going to be able to copy this content you can see there is a little bit of code for a button, and there's some code for the modal itself. And if you look more closely, you'll see that there is an ellipsis there, or 3 dots, and that is where our content is going to go inside of all of these div tags here. And so we're going to use that whole top part for the top part above our fields, and then the bottom part below our fields. And you can see below our fields there will be some buttons. One is called close and one's called save changes. At the moment we are going to replace the save changes one with our update button because we already created that one. But there's a few little things you have to do when you create that. So let's go take a look at our code here. So this is the code in our default.aspx. No changes since our last update, and you can see we've got our grid view there. We've got a bunch of bound fields that we created for our, you remember our table that we created, and then we had this section that says edit data on it, and you can see there's the end div for the other section. Here's the starting column for our edit data section, but the edit data section is kind of clunky. You know, it was all these all these form controls that we put together, and it sort of ended near the bottom there, and it's inside of this this column here, which is part of the layout of the page. But after adding some more fields to our update, we found that having the data on the right hand side is kind of clunky and it doesn't really work. So we're going to change that. We're going to put all of those fields into a pop-up. And we can do that quite simply now that we have the newest Bootstrap controls there with the modal. Modal has actually been around for a while. Unfortunately, WebForms didn't follow that for quite a long time, but with the recent update that they did, it's awesome we have it. So we're going to create a little section here at the bottom. We created a little section of empty space at the top of our controls, the whole edit data section, right? And what we're going to do is we're basically just going to copy in some code here. So going back to the getbootstrap.com, there is our button, and here is the starting sort of code that's going to sort of be an envelope around our update controls. And so let's copy that stuff there. You can copy the whole thing using that clipboard on the top right there, but we are just going to grab a little bit of it here. So we're going to paste that in, and that is going to be the sort of starting point of our modal, and we're going to put that at the very start in front of our edit data section. We can move that stuff over there, and you can see it comes with a tag saying modal, so we can find it in our code, which is nice. And there's our starting header for our edit data, and at the very bottom here you can see there's the empty space for the sort of the container, the wrapper around this little section. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll just grab the rest of that code from the Get Bootstrap page here, and what we'll do is we'll copy that and we'll go ahead and we'll paste that at the bottom. And what that's going to do is going to take everything that's inside of that little area there, all of our controls for the edit section, and it's going to put it into a modal, which is awesome. That's what we want to see. That's going to make things a lot nicer for, being able to do this. And so there we go. We've got starting and ending sections for our modal, and that is awesome. So we're not going to change anything here just yet. This button is going to say save changes, and then we have another button that's just a close button, and there's our actual update button. That's the one we created for our application. It's connected into ASP and everything. We're going to be moving that button to take the spot of that save changes one. But first, let's see if this actually works. Let's grab the button. Now this is the button that will trigger the modal to pop up, and so we're going to copy that. We're going to put that into our little row of buttons on our application. You can put it anywhere that you need to in your app, of course. but I'm going to scroll right to the top here, and our little sort of header that has some buttons in it. You can see this is our list of tow jobs, the filter driver, phone, download, etc., etc. And this is inside of a table, table cells, a table with table cells here in ASP.NET. And we can actually put this in the same cell, I think, as the refresh button. So you can see that refresh button. It's just sort of sitting there. If you want to refresh the page, we can just put our button right beside that. And in order to do that, we'll just drop it into the same cell in our little table there. That table is just for display. It's for layout purposes, really. And I'll just put that button in there. So you can see that data target is this example modal. We can change that name if we need to, but if you do go change that, you have to find it everywhere in the little bit of code. You could probably do a select all and change it. But I'm going to leave the name or the text on the button as the default for now. It says launch demo modal, so we can see what's happening. So let's see if this actually works. Let's pop this up here. We hit F5, or you can click IIS on the toolbar there to launch the application, and let's see what we get here. Okay, so the first thing that we notice is the edit data section is completely gone from the right hand side of our screen there, and that's exactly what we want to see there. You can see we have a new button called launch demo modal, and we can click it, and let's see what we get here. So there we go. We've got our modal pop-up. That looks pretty cool, and we can use our wheel, on our mouse to scroll it, or you can use the scroller on the right hand side, which is pretty cool. It says, edit data. It says modal title at the top. We'll have to change that. But you can see inside of here lots of things that we've, our different controls are what we want to see. There's our update button, which will operate exactly the same way that we saw before. And so that's a really neat looking pop-up, and as you can probably guess, this is going to be very handy for your applications. Now you can use that X at the top to close it, or you can use the close button, and that's really cool. Now the Save Changes button doesn't actually do anything yet, even if I click it. You need to have the dismiss tag on there, and we'll show that here in just a second. But that's pretty cool. So we can still click on our rows just like we did before, and the controls get filled in just like before. And so this is a neat way to look up the data in our application. The users are going to love it, and it really is a much nicer workflow than before. And so now we can see that we can create the pop-up. So let's go ahead and start changing a few things here. There is our comment, so we can see where our modal is, and you can see there is the target. So that's the target tag, the data BS target there. That's going to tell the button which of the modals to open, because you might have several modals, and in fact we will be adding another one probably in order to do an edit or some other feature. But you can change that text in between the tags for the button to whatever you like. I put edit there, and that is going to create an edit button. And then we also need to make a few little changes down here. We'll scroll down and take a look at this. So there's our modal title, and we're going to change that. Of course, that is inside of there. We'll just call it update for now. You might have something different in your application. Other than that, you don't really need to change anything in the boilerplate code there. I mean, you can change the example modal text in the tags to something more descriptive for your application, but really that's really all we need to do there. I'll shift that commented code over so we can see where our modal starts, and let's go take a look at our controls here. So let's scroll down. Let's find that update button. So that is the button that has the functionality. This is our ASP button, which is CMD update, and you can see it already has some styling on it and things, but that's our update button, and we are going to cut that line of code with our ASP button information on it. We'll cut that out, and we are going to maybe we can get rid of some of these paragraph tags. So now we have some empty paragraphs here at the bottom. Let's delete those, and now we can paste that line of code over top of the Save Changes button there. So that's that whole line right there. You can see that is the sort of boilerplate code button. Let's delete that and put in our own button because we already have an update button. Now we can go ahead and make a few little changes to our update button. The first one is that secondary button type in our CSS. We're going to change that to a primary. That'll give us the blue button instead of the gray button that we had before. And we need to have this tag here. Now this is very important for any ASP buttons that you put onto the modal, because this is what allows us to close the modal after our button did whatever it does, you know. So if you don't put the dismiss on there, the stuff that your button does will happen, but the actual modal will not close, because that's all happening with JavaScript and CSS in the background. So let's go ahead and see what we got there. We'll hit the IIS button on the toolbar and start our application here, and let's just see what we get. So there is our local host with our default page, and it looks pretty much the same as what we did before. We can click on the rows in the list just like we did, and they become highlighted, which is what we want to see there. Then we can click the edit button and we'll get the data that we see here, and you can see there is our Jeep YJ for Amber Stone, and we can close the button using the X on the top right there. We can close it down at the bottom if we want to, and we can open it, and we can also update the data. So now you can see the update button is down in the bottom right with the close button, and now we can add something to our data and see if it updates. So we'll click update on that. You'll see that the modal closes because we put the tag on it, and now you can see oh, I guess it's not one of the fields that is in the list. So let's scroll down. So there we go. Yeah, we've got our data updated just the way that we would like to see, and we are good to go. Next, let's change that vehicle to Jeep Renegade instead of Jeep YJ, and let's see what the update looks like. So we'll click update, and it should update on screen. It did, and so that is great. That's what we want to see. So we can update those ones. That's really cool, and we're good to go. So that is awesome. That's what we want to see. We want to have that update button so that it works correctly, and it is working, and awesome. But of course now we have a little bit more real estate on our screen now that we don't have that edit data section taking up the right hand side of our table there. So let's go back into our data. You can see the row starting on line 18 there, and it has a couple of column divs in there. Let's expand that one column to 80%. You could actually remove the columns and the row entirely and just have this sitting outside of any kind of columns, but just for now I'll expand that to 80%, and let's see what we get if we expand our column. So that looks a lot nicer. There we go. So now we've got a much nicer list. We could even expand it more, maybe 90% or 100%. So that looks pretty cool. We can click our edit button and we can find our data here, and just like before we can scroll it in order to see what we need to see. You can also put the controls that are in the pop-up in a table so that you can have multiple columns, and that makes it nicer to view as well. I would definitely say give it a try, since that will reduce the amount of scrolling that you'll see, and it'll put those into nice columns. So you can do quite a bit of layout inside of the modal as well. Okay, so what is the next thing? Of course, the next thing to do is to publish our application into app services on Azure, just like we have been doing for the rest of the series, and we're going to go ahead and publish that using our publish button there. It really is pretty cool. It goes and it will overwrite the entire application that was in 4.7.2, and since we were already running on a 4.8 configuration in Azure, it really just starts it as if it's native and we don't have to worry about too much. Okay, it started my browser in the background here with our toe-operations.azurewebsites.net. You can see that at the top here, and the application. You can see there's some other differences. You can see the headings at the top. We're going to have to go and clean those up. We're going to have to clean up a few other things as well. And we can use our edit button now, which gives us a modal so that users can go and work on data in the application. And so we'll change that Camry to a Corolla, and we'll hit update on that, and that should update it in our list here. It did, and that is exactly what we want to see. These other buttons will work as usual, and we are good to go. That is the modal feature that we have gotten in the newest Bootstrap for our WebForms application, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much cool stuff in Bootstrap 5.2. Need time entry for your staff out in the field? Make sure to check out my Bill Zone system. The link is in the description.